mother. Eat up, son, eat up. If you can wait a wee bit longer, the snail stew will be done simmering. Mum Swallow fluttered about the kitchen fretting over every dish so it would be just right for Micah.
Mum, please, this is quite a feast already. I swear your plum and venison porridge is quite enough.
Micah got up and took the hot pan from his mother. But she paid him no mind and swatted him with her dish rag. Nonsense, dear boy, you ate more than your father. Bless his heavenly wings when you were but a wee chicklet. Mum knows best, dear. Micah gave up arguing with his mother. For it was a battle he would surely never win. 6 steaming bowls of porridge later, Brother Gentry stumbled through the front door, crashing and stumbling over the kitchen chairs, as he did. By the wings of the mother. Mum Swallow screamed, "What happened to you, my boy?" Micah picked his brother off the floor as their mother worried over him and tipped his chin up. Gentry's eyes were blackened, and his already mangled feathers were even worse for wear.
Brother, tell me, who did this?
Gentry pushed Micah away, then stumbled to the table, dragging a half-eaten bowl of snail stew to his mouth.
Oh, hush up. It's nothing to fret about.
Micah rose from the floor, then gently guided their weeping mother up the stairs.
Mom, don't cry. I'll sort this out. Go lay down, okay?
Mum Swallow nimbly made her way to the upstairs bedroom without another word. Micah cleaned up what he could off the floor, then sat at the table on the opposite side of his brother.
I know we aren't on the best of terms, Gentry. But it hurts me to see you like this. So talk to me, brother.
Gentry cocked his swollen eyebrow but continued to eat in silence.
Where were you last night, brother?
Micah looked perplexed.
Why would my whereabouts matter, Gentry?
His brother pushed the empty bowl aside and gulped down the entire pitcher of ale. After wiping his mouth, he spoke again.
I'm a bit confused, you see. Word on the street is that you aided the slaves in escaping last night. The Lord said you went missing around the same time they did.
Micah's golden eyes flickered with rage.
Say that again, but this time don't spout horse shit. So the Lord said I did what?
Gentry tapped his hands on the wooden table, then leaned back to look Micah in the eyes.
Are you that surprised, brother? You and your men run around playing Robin Hood saving damsels in distress and righting wrongs all the time. Is it that unheard of, that you would free the flightless females?
Micah slammed his fist on the tabletop, causing a large splinter down the middle between him and Gentry.
The slum lords, are they the ones that did this?
Gentry sat forward and rubbed his face into his hands while laughing.
You really had nothing to do with it, did you?
Gentry threw his head back as his manic laughter possessed him.
So I was beaten all for nothing.
Micah's jaw twitched, as he pondered silently. Ever since he was made the commander knight of the capital, Gentry had been coming home bruised and beaten. He had always assumed it was because of Gentry's smart mouth and soft heart towards the flightless. But never did it cross his mind that the lords were targeting Gentry, because they were too cowardly to bring their dissatisfaction to him. Micah rose from the kitchen table, then kneeled by his brother's side. Gentry looked awestruck and hurriedly tried to raise Micah from the ground. But Micah was more than triple his size.
Brother, by the wings of the mother, I swear to you. Since I was nothing more than a discarded egg in the dark forest.
Gentry tried to hush his brother, but Micah kept on.
No, brother, let me finish. Because of you finding my egg that day and bringing it home, I gained another chance. Without you, I would be nothing. So please don't bear my burdens. My sins are my own. But my blessings are for the family.
Gentry wept, then threw his arms around his brother's head.
I know, brother, I know. In my own way, I thought I was protecting you. My not-so-small little brother. By feeding them false information and lies. But this time, they surely meant to kill me.
Micah grunted, then leaned his head towards his brother, grasping the back of Gentry's head in a familial embrace.
All I know is that some slaves escaped. I left my position to help them look. I'd never thought the lords would place the blame on me.
Gentry shrugged his shoulders in reply.
I'm not sure either, brother, but you made the perfect scapegoat.
After Gentry had all he wanted for breakfast, Micah helped his older brother up the stairs, then kissed his mother before heading over to the knights' barracks. As Micah made his way there, the townspeople watched him and whispered unceasingly. Some eyed him with suspicion, while others made hand gestures of praise, saluting him for saving the flightless. But Micah paid them no mind and pressed forth.
That's bullshit,
Yelled Rohan Emu at the group of knights standing around the commander's desk.
I saw Commander Griffin with my own eyes last night.
The other members of the knighthood mumbled their thoughts, but they all hushed when Commander Griffin walked into the room. May the wings of the mother embrace you, Sir Griffin. With a salute, they greeted their superior.
Good day, Sir Emu, Vulture, Raven, and Hawk.
They nodded their heads and stood silently around his desk.
I'm guessing you all heard.
The men started spouting off their frustrations like a busted dam.
I was just telling them, brother, that you came in early and relieved me of my shift. How could the lords lie like this?
That's not all, Commander.
Sir Vulture paused before continuing.
They are implicating the entire Griffin Order of collaborating with the flightless.
Micah stood up from his desk. The golden scales on his forearms rose, forming sharp spikes along his exposed skin. Not only were the slumlords coming after Micah and his family, they had also implicated his men. When Micah got angry, his knights knew to keep their distance. The griffins of myth were believed to be more beastly than avians, which is why Micah was given such a name as a young chick. As Micah's rage pushed towards the surface, his thigh and arm muscles thickened. Then his chest swelled, doubling his size. But, to their surprise, he could repress his transformation before he shifted into this final form. Rohan hesitantly stepped forward, placing his hands before him in a gesture of submission.
Sir Griffin, this may not be as bad as we think.
Micah's golden eyes eyed Rohan with annoyance.
I'm serious, Commander. Hear me out.
Micah took several deep breaths and slowly let his power subside. Then Rohan continued.
Word on the street is that those two guards are some nasty fellows.
Sir Raven shrugged his shoulders and questioned how that had anything to do with their current plight. But Sir Hawk also stated an alarming little detail.
I've heard that too, but those fuckers had a bad habit of bedding hatchlings.
Everyone in the room turned their head his way at that accusation.
Well, not hatchlings per se.
He corrected.
They prefer the younglings. The wee babes of the slaves.
As if that's any better.
Roared Micah. The other knights also agreed.
A child is a child, wings or not.
Sir Vulture squawked.
Losing their peckers was quite the fitting reward, I say.
All the knights' hands fell to their nethers as they imagined what the loss would mean.
If it wasn't you, Sir Griffin, then who could overpower 2 trained Imperial guards and flee without getting caught?
Hawk questioned. They all sat in silence as they mulled it over. Not quite home. Nemala sat before the crackling fire. Asmino and Virilla weaved lilies and sweet pea blossoms into her hair. Ever since their escape, over 14 moons ago, the younglings had grown quite attached to Nemala. For the most part, everyone showed her reverence as their savior. Now that the females were getting regular meals, clean water, and sunlight, their health and complexions had improved. Even the babes now had meat on their bones. The sound of laughter and children playing made the past seem distant now. But Nemala knew better. The lagoons were only a rest haven along the way. These people needed something more than a temporary shelter. They needed a place to call home. So when the younglings were laid down to rest, Nemala called the elders and the other women to the fire pit.
What is it, Sister Nemala?
Tora asked. She was now one of the more outspoken of the young redheads. I think we're getting too comfortable here, rasped Nemala, while throwing another cedar branch into the waiting flames.
But we are safe here,
refuted an elder.
but this is not quite home,
replied the grey-haired elder that sat to the left of Nemala. Nemala gripped the old woman's hand, then continued talking. I know that you are all fearful. Anywhere is better than that musty, damp cell. But there has to be somewhere better.
Then can you take us to where you came from?
Asked Gala, the shyest amongst the three redheads. Nemala shook her head. As I told you before, I know not from whence I came. I only know my name is Nemala and that I have. Nemala was cut off by the women whispering powers in unison. Nemala sighed and looked at her hands. First, a swirl of bluish-black mist wafted from her hands, then small glittering orbs danced between her fingertips. Minnow had said the tiny orbs looked like the stars high in the sky. But Nemala wasn't sure what this power was. It gave her unnatural strength and supernatural abilities. Even some of the beast and demon inhabitants of the forest kneeled down before her. But for some reason metal stripped her power away. Nemala pushed her copper and brown tresses off her face and leaned closer to the flame. I'm going to scout further into the forest. The lady's eyes all widened as if they believed they were being left behind. I'm not leaving you, but taking you along would surely slow me down. I need to figure out the best course of action. Nemala looked at everyone. Her violet eyes seemed more radiant in the firelight. The beast and demons won't come here even if I'm away. With my scent being so strong here, they won't cross our thresholds. The group voiced several objections before the grey-haired elder spoke up.
Did I ever tell you all the story of how I got here?
Everyone stopped talking and listened to the elder speak. I'm sure none of you remember, but we weren't born here. Do you remember your origins? Asked Nemala. The elder smiled happily, showing her rotted teeth and blackened gums.
Yes, our fire tribe people are from the north.
She pointed toward the mines.
Before the Wind Mother was angered, she turned into a phoenix and caused dirt to split and volcanoes to cry out. Our land and seas were bountiful, full of green hills and sparkling blue oceans. A land full of fiery red hair as far as they can see.
One of the younger women gripped the tip of her scarlet locks between her forefingers, imagining the elder's words.
Then how did we end up like this?
The grey-haired elder's smile withered as she continued her story.
Some say the father of the sea betrayed the Wind Mother. When he met her sister, our fire tribe's queen, he fell helplessly in love.
The father of the sea? Nemala questioned.
Yes, dear girl. Just as the Wind One prayed to the Mother. Long ago, we prayed to the Father and our fire tribe queen.
The grey-haired elder looked off in the distance.
For many years, the Father held back on his feelings, honoring his matrimony to the Wind Mother, staying faithful to their bond despite not truly loving her. There was balance and harmony throughout the lands for as long as he did. Then one day, the earth trembled. Volcanoes erupted in the capital and even within the seas. Our once fertile lands turned into a smoldering wasteland. One after another, our kingdoms fell, because he could no longer deny his lust.
Nemala shook her head, pondering over the elder's story.
A woman scorned is capable of many things, but a goddess scorned brings wrath. Their forbidden love was the seed of our destruction. Because of their selfishness, we were all doomed to become what we are today.
The grey-haired elder sighed and hugged herself tightly.
As we fled south out of the path of the volcanic flow, we were forced to flee to the land of the Wind Mother. But she was wrathful. She spurned us. Because of our queen's sins, we were stripped of our memories and forced to become slaves to her wind children.
The elder's eyes became glossy as her tears danced down the deep wrinkles of her face.
My son and I were the only one to survive in our family. Instead of becoming slaves, many of our Fire Tribe's members opted to return to our beginning. They fled into the volcanic wastelands seeking to burn themselves to embers. But I could not do it. I could not do that to my son. So I pleaded with the Wind Guards, giving them my body and other favors so that my son would have milk and enough food to grow, to survive. But I got too comfortable and was caught by one of the guards' wives.
The elder's voice cracked as she recalled the heartbreaking story of her past.
For my first punishment, I was forced to watch as his wife tossed my son into molten lava. Then I was dragged through the capital and forced to stand before the temple of the Wind Mother. I repented and prayed so hard for forgiveness, begging for the goddess to take my memories and my mind as she did so many others. But she did not care about my tears or my heartache. I was cursed with keeping my mind, cursed to forever be tormented by my sins, no matter how long time passes. The only thing she took from me was my ability to cry.
Nemala felt a dull pain in her heart, a prickle just above her left breast. But as she raised her hand to rub it, an even sharper pain sliced through her temples. Nemala screamed out in pain as the women surrounded her, attempting to desperately help their savior. Exile over pride. Micah embraced Mum Swallow, wrapping his massive arms around the only mother he had ever known. Her sorrowful tears dampened the front of his tunic. His mother gripped his shirt tightly, refusing to let her adopted son go. Gentry stepped forward, engulfing his brother with what may be the very last hug they shared, then forcefully pulled their wailing mother to his side.
This isn't a farewell, dear mother. Simply think of this as a long kiss goodnight.
At Micah's words, Mum Swallow cried until she fainted from exhaustion. Micah looked up at the sky, fighting back the burning tears that formed in the corner of his eyes.
Fret not, brother. I promise I will look after Mum. Just make sure you stay safe and return to us one day.
With a nod, Gentry carried his mother back towards the capital. When Gentry left, Brother Emu, Raven, Hawk, and Vulture stepped forward. Unlike Micah, his former knights didn't have the resolve not to cry. All of their faces were marred with tears. Brother Hawk stepped forward, his large brown wings swaying from side to side as he embraced his former commander's forearm one last time.
It's been a privilege to serve with you, Commander. They may have taken your title, but they haven't taken our pride.
With a firm nod, Hawk flew up and away from the dark forest. Vulture and Raven stepped forward together, embracing their commander with a full-blown hug. They opted not to verbalize their goodbyes before leaving. Rohan was the last to leave. He walked Micah deeper into the forest, dragging out their farewells as long as they could.
This is all horseshit, Brother Griffin. The whole capital has become corrupted and tainted with filth, and the king. The fucking king. Don't get me started on him.
Rohan roared while striking the nearest tree with his foot. Micah didn't disagree. Whoever had planned this was meticulous. This whole plot seemed too elaborate for it to be thought out by just a few lords of the capital. Micah was sure King Peacock was making his intentions known.
I understand, brother, but at least by me being exiled, you all get to keep your lives. My title means nothing if I can't stand beside my brothers.
Micah thumped his chest and smiled at Rohan. But his old friend frowned, causing the scar on his face to pull tight.
We may no longer be knights of the capital, but to me, you will always be the greatest knight. Farewell, my friend.
After a long embrace, Micah was left alone with only the trees to listen to the crying wails of a heartbroken man. The call of nature. After collapsing, it took a while to convince the fire tribe females that she was healthy enough to scout a new shelter. But it had to be done. The cave wasn't suitable for the little ones. It had served its purpose. Now it was time to move on. Nemala hurriedly ran through the dark forest, through the dense fog, and over gnarled roots, the wet moss and decaying leaves squelched against the underside of her feet. The trees were nothing more than varying green and brown blobs as she sped by. Movement in the underbrush alerted her that a pack of silver wolves was running alongside her. But they weren't the only creatures that Nemala noticed. There was an orange and black creature that looked like a mixture between a lynx and a tiger to her right. However, Nemala felt no fear. She felt exhilaration. When she stopped, they stopped. When she ran, they ran. At first, she believed the large predators were attempting to hunt her. But soon realized they, like the other forest dwellers, were merely drawn to her presence. When Nemala squatted down by a small creek for a drink of water, the largest of the silver wolves trotted up and began to whimper, lowering itself to the ground, then rolling over to expose its belly. Nemala laughed at how the fearsome creature was behaving, trolloping around as if it was a wee house pup. Nemala reached down and rubbed the coarse fur of the silver wolf, quelling its whimpers into playful yelps and barks. Eventually, the entire pack surrounded her, each pushing their way forward, vying to receive her touch or scratch behind the ear. The cat-like creature wasn't too far off. It seemed to be content as long as Nemala stayed within its view. What should have been a short break turned into an hour-long play session. While everyone rested to catch their breath, the crickets and frogs began their cradle song. Finally, Nemala relaxed and fell into a light slumber, only rousing from her nap when the feline she was leaning on repositioned itself. Nemala sighed as she snuggled into the large cat, seeking its warmth. The large cat purred as she talked to it as if she was a long-time friend. "You know, Misky." That was the name she had given the cat demon. "I don't think this is where I belong." The cat's yellow eyes dilated and constricted as it stared at her as if it understood. Then it slapped its heavy tail down over Nemala's stomach. Nemala laughed at the sassy attitude of her new friend, then stroked its plush black and orange coat. "It's getting late, Misky. I think I'll bathe, fish, and set up camp." The cat chuffed as Nemala sat up and removed her tattered gown that no longer looked like an actual piece of clothing. But it was all she had. With a swift leap, Nemala dove into the brisk creek. As the golden orb above lowered, rays of brilliant light danced upon the green water's surface. Nemala held her breath and went under. Lump thump. Lump thump. Something was soothing about the sound of her heartbeat echoing through the gentle water current. Listening to it made her feel alive. Call of Nature Part 2. Micah bellowed a deep, guttural roar as he smashed through the tree line. His golden scales and talons were now knives destroying the rocky vined pillars and trees. But it wasn't enough to soothe the raging beast within. For the sake of his loved ones, he bowed down to King Peacock, accepting the charge of treason for aiding and abiding by the theft of the king's personal slaves. Micah knew it was all bullshit. The royal council saw him as a threat. If not for the sake of his family and knight's order, Micah could have toppled the entire capital and taken over the throne. But it was pointless. The capital was going to shit. It was no longer a prospering free-thinking kingdom, but a cesspool for 50 criminal and corrupt kings. Whoosh. Micah's massive white wings pushed him higher into the clouds. The capital was nothing more than a small rocky speck, surrounded by a sea of lava and ash. So he flew higher, only stopping when the air became thin and frost encrusted the edges of his majestic wings. If only there was something beyond the sea of fire. If only there were more. But now, he had nothing. Lost in his devastation, hovering in the vaporous clouds, silently watching as the purple and pink sky was chased away by the 3 moons.
Why? If I don't belong in the capital, where do I belong? Did I cheat the fates as a hatchling? Was it the winged mother's intention for me to be just this? Is this karma righting her wrongs? Where are the rest of my kind? Where are the rest of the griffins, for I'm surely not fully avian, nor am I fully beast.
Micah screamed question after question into the cosmos, wishing the heavens would reply. But he knew better. The gods were cruel, bastardly beings. His plight was nothing more than an insignificant ant's worry.
What is the point of this power?
Micah barked out.
If I can't even save the ones I love?
At the utterance of his last words, Micah took a deep breath, tucked his wings behind him, and allowed himself to plummet back to the earth. No longer willing to be at the mercy of fate. Sploot! Splash! Something ripped through the water, striking Nemala with so much force that her teeth clattered. If not for the power living within her, she would have surely died. Nemala opened her eyes, scanning the murky water cautiously. At first, she was startled. There was a figure in the water. His features were muddled by the displaced sediment and algae from the force of his impact. But he had wings. The sharp tips resembled double-sided swords. His skin was dark but nowhere comparable to Nemala's. He looked like a demon from the capital, but not quite. He was different. Bigger. She looked at his arms and chest muscles while sucking her lips slightly. Way bigger. She mumbled. Nemala kept her distance, purposely swimming through the reeds and water vegetation to hide her form. But when she noticed that he remained still, it caused some alarm. Is he dead? She swam closer, cautiously waiting for him to blow bubbles or open his eyes. But he did nothing. So closer she came, eyeing him with suspicion and awe, carefully circling his enormity. His wings alone stretched to both edges of the creek. Leave him, Nemala, his death has nothing to do with you. Push forward. The girls are awaiting your return. Her inner voice warned. But Nemala didn't heed her own advice. With a bit of help from her powers, she pulled the unconscious angel, bird, beast being towards the surface, avoiding the sharp golden scales that covered most of his forearms. With one final tug, he was dragged ashore. Huffed. Nemala exhaled loudly. Even with her powers, the behemoth at her feet was stupidly oversized. The more she thought about it, the more agitated she became. Who would create someone this damn big? She groaned while rubbing her sore shoulders. I should have just let the fates claim you, I fucking swear. Nemala stomped to the boulder, where she had left her gown, splattering water droplets on the sodden grass, as she waved her hands in exasperation. Miski purred, welcoming her return, then hissed when Nemala's damp hair came too close for comfort. What the hell is that? Nemala questioned Miski in an annoyed tone. Miski crooked her head to the side in confusion. Nemala turned and pointed to the creek side as she yanked her gown over her head. That big lump of a turd. I don't know why I carried him up, Miski. She brusquely replied to the demon cat as if it had asked her why. Nemala plopped down on the boulder and pouted. Not sure why she was so worked up. But she was mad. Hoping to get back into Nemala's good side, Miski placed a half-eaten fish on Nemala's lap. A slight smile tugged at the corners of her lips as she looked at the large cat before her. When the wolves saw Miski receiving praise, they howled in jealousy, then dashed into the forest, hoping to hunt for Nemala's next meal. The Call of Nature Part 3. All Micah could feel was heat, a burning sensation radiating from the tip of his wings to the soles of his feet. He tried to move away from the heat source, but his body wouldn't respond. Is this the nether realm? Have I fallen into the volcanic wasteland? His inner voice inquired. But the sound of a female's voice snapped him out of his stupor. Whoever it was singing. It was nothing like the melodic voice of other avian females. It sounded raspy, husky, and full of soul. Even in the darkest of nights, my stars will guide you home, the place where you belong. Don't fret, dear child, for I will show you every step of the way. Just look to the sky, and my stars will guide you home. With every belted cry of the female's voice, a tingle would traverse through Micah's body, note after note. The more she repeated the song, the more emotional her voice became. What started as a soft melody was now a fervent cry to the heavens. Why was this woman so tormented? Was she like me, seeking a place to belong? Micah dwelled on it as he drifted back into unconsciousness. The firelight danced and crackled as Nemala peered at the statuesque man through the flames, studying the minute features of his handsomely rugged face. From the thickness of his eyebrows to the way his eyelashes rested upon his chiseled cheeks, her eyes moved higher, observing the way his platinum and gold-streaked hair perfectly matched the slight shadow of a beard that covered his lower face. While stalkerishly studying her potential enemy, she noticed that he was sweating. Dead men don't sweat. Nemala giggled to herself, while a slight smile creased her face. By the gods, why am I so happy about him being alive? She muttered her annoyance into the fire. He has nothing to do with me, and I have nothing to do with him. She then slapped the dirt off her hand and pulled her legs to her chest throughout the night. Her animal friends had abandoned her, probably because of the strange winged man that lay unconscious nearby, or because of their sleep being disturbed by Nemala traipsing to and from the creek several times, wetting large potholes leaves to place upon the man's feverish head. In the wee hours of the night, she was awakened by his cries of pain. His beautiful tanned face had turned ghastly pale except for the crimson-tinted patches of skin near his temples. After slapping another leaf on his forehead, Nemala squatted down next to him. Her fingers gently traced over a peculiar scar near his ear, before poking him in his cheek. Saving you is more than what I bargained for.
But I am forever grateful.
Micah coughed. Fates be with me. Nemala shrieked in surprise, unsure if the quivering in her heart was from her being scared or his sultry, deep voice. Micah winced and stretched one of his sore arms out in supplication.
Don't be afraid, I won't hurt you.
Nemala's nose flared and nipples hardened as he looked at her with his compelling, lustrous eyes. She backed away guardedly, placing her feet in a defensive position, preparing to fight. Micah attempted to sit up but felt a sharp spike of pain in his coracoid.
By the mother, I think my wing is dislocated.
He rolled his other shoulder, flexing and straining the muscles in his arms and hands. The sound of a raspy gasp caused him to gaze up. The woman standing before him was more beautiful than he had ever imagined. Her skin, by the fates, looked as if the gods molded her from the richest of soils and sands. Her round face was plump and youthful, but those eyes held the look of time-worn sorrow. Nemala flipped her long brass-colored hair, balled up her fist, then centered her stance. His eyes lowered to her beautiful dark brown legs, as thick as zona trees. A coquettish smile crept upon Micah's face as he noticed that her feet were perfectly poised to parry and invade if he indeed wanted to attack her. To convey his genuinity, Micah lowered his head and placed his hands flat on the cool, lush grass at his sides. But Nemala didn't drop her guard.
You have my word. I will not harm you.
Nemala's breath faltered as she quietly bit out a harsh rebuke. Your word means nothing to me. Stop talking. Micah cocked his golden eyes upwards, causing Nemala to bite her lip and take a few steps back. But regardless of the distance she put between them, the scent of her arousal was undeniable. Micah sniffed the air and instinctively growled.
Shit. No, I didn't mean to.
But as the deep rumble tumbled from his chest, Nemala took off, sprinting as fast as she could, rushing deeper into the brush, ducking and vaulting over the jagged, gnarly rocks and rotten foliage. Micah slammed his fist down on the grass, then forced himself to his feet, staggering slightly as his limp wing caused him to become unbalanced. He needed to catch her, he needed to explain she had nothing to fear. But most of all, he had to protect her. For she couldn't have known the danger that awaited her within the foreboding spans of the dark forest.